Hi everyone. Um, just a bit of an update of news. The Kickstarter's gone past the 50,000, so unless lots of people drop out, it's going to be a success, which is great. But I have been working on this video, and the idea of this is to go through the four main options of what you can do with the system. And go into greater depth on three of them. The PC I'm not bothered with because I won't be building them. It's just a PC build, nothing difficult there. So they're going to go through that, but it is about an hour 40 minutes of footage. I'm sorry about that, but there is actually quite a lot to go through. So there's three sections. In fact, let me pop this up on the screen, runtime in. There are three sections, and as you can see, there's Raspberry Pi video, which is first, then the UnAmiga ITX, then the MiSTix, and at the end of it, there's a small section showing the PC, but not a great deal about that. I think the first three are the most important. So I thought what I would do is, I'd briefly go through, before you see this, I'd briefly go through two or three things. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the process post completion, assuming nothing goes wrong and everyone doesn't back out because they change their mind. Because I would say the last week it's been between 47 and 49,000. It's been going up and down, up and down, up and down. It's like, it was only today it kind of tipped over. So, but what we did, we're going to repeat the same as we did last time. And that was basically, we don't have pre-orders. People can send me an email to say they want to go on the waiting list. And then once I've shipped the backers cases, we email out, usually actually, to be fair, I actually do it before then because I have to order another batch. But it means at a certain point I'll email everyone saying, okay, right, you can go on, you can order now. But that'll be once we're almost shipping out the cases for the existing backers. That way, as I said, because it's not my day job, so it gets confusing if I'm doing pre-orders. But what you have to do, after the Kickstarter, what happens then is all the data gets moved into my site. And on that site, I put all the details that I've got of yours, your name, etc., and bits and pieces, and the amount you pledged, and what you wanted. And I'll make some guesses. If you haven't picked colours, I'll guess the colours, and then you'll be able to go in, update your order, correct anything you want to change. Now this is a really important thing. You need to put your address and your shipping address. They may be separate. They may be different. It's important that you do all that, and then it will calculate the cost of shipping. That's very important because obviously I need to know, and then there's a payment of the shipping. Now, if you do order extras, you can do that at that time, sort out what you want, and then make your payment of your balance. Now, it is also important to understand the order of shipping is done on the invoice number, and the invoice number gets created when you've paid for your order. So if you're just buying a case, you just pay for your shipping, which is all you'll have outstanding to pay your shipping, and then you'll get generated an invoice number. That's then your position in the queue. It's not done by when you put your name down for the Kickstarter. It is because I do it this way, and it works very well because it incentivizes people to give me their details quick, because I did have a lot of people that left it very late and I didn't know where they were going and so on. So it does incentivize people. So that's the way it works. And if you do want to add some extras, then that's the time to do it. If at that point in time you can't afford to pay for the extras, because obviously it's going to be a few months before it ships, just pay. I mean, this will cause major problems. It may delay your order. I'll be honest, it will probably delay your order. But if you're finding it hard to pay for the extras, say you want to have a MiSTix pack, okay, and it's going to add a bit of cost, and you want to spread it a little bit, pay for the shipping, get your place in the queue, and then later on, if it's left too late, it could be a problem. But we'll discuss that as we go through the process post Kickstarter. But then it's a case of me working out the numbers of boards that I need to order, because if there's not many people ordering certain boards, then I'll only order small numbers, and so when you come around to order, there may not be any left, so just bear that in mind. But just if there's a problem, email me. I'll know that you're thinking of doing it, and then I'll put it. It's one of those things we have to work around. So that's the process, but it's very important you go on there, do your details, pay your shipping at least, okay, and then when you'll be at the front of the queue. Right, next point. I did speak to Lexi when I did the interview the other day about being able to fit one of these. So if you've got one of these like I have, and you want to be able to put that into it, so I'm considering doing it. I mean, I said to him I will do it. The problem is initially it's going to be a problem. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do it straight away. But theoretically, yes, so we can pop that into the case. It's just a case, and give you some mounting holes so you can use the screw holes. The problem we've got is this, that on the rear panel is what cutout do I put on it? Because do you put it on that way? I don't know if this is in focus, with the RGB. If I do that, the power inputs, the barrel inputs are outside. Yeah, if I turn it around that way, then I've got loads of cables from the VGA and the HDMI. Also, if you've not got all the bits, which bits do I allow? So there's confusion from my point of view on how we go about doing that. That's a useful kit. So just bear that in mind. The ideal solution is, he says, not wanting to do with this, why I bought another one, is to take your D10 Nano, put it on the MiSTix board, shove it in, and away you go, you're laughing. So anyway, that's that. Also, I don't include, in fact, let me just load up the prices. Now, this is obviously quite important. You might want to pause this and have a look at this. You may want to do that. But anyway, so here's the prices. And now one thing it doesn't mention on here is the fact that you can upgrade to, we have a whole lot of licenses for Hyperion's Amiga OS 3.1.4. I'm not including it standard because obviously it's paid for. You'll be able to add it as at what I've paid for it, which is £15. I think I paid about £14 to be fair, but with £15 upgrade, which is nearly half the price of if you went online and got it from the Hyperion. So I've got a bunch of licenses. I was going to include them, but it just pushes the price up, mate. It's just trying to keep these costs down. So if you do want that, you don't need it, because you do need the Amiga Forever, because it's got the 1.3, the 2.0, the 3, all these different OS licenses. Everything in there is really what you want. It also means I might even, I'm sure they won't mind, but it's a DVD pack as well. So you get the DVDs, which is no use probably to you. But because we're putting the DVDs in, I'll probably talk to clients about including the digital versions of the videos which are on it, which are fantastic, the videos. See if we can put them onto the SD card. We'll see about that. Anyway, so there we go. So you can see now the pricing. So I'll waffle a bit and you can read the pricing. Yes, I mean, the pricing. There's not much I do about the pricing. It is what it is. But you can see if you put a Raspberry Pi in here and you just want the kit, basically the picture you see there, you just take the Pi off and the cooler, obviously. And that's what you're going to get. So you're going to get the frame, you're going to get the Geek Pi thing that turns it around, and then our ATX adapter with the power lead going to it. So and a screw pack. And all you've got to do is add your Pi, shove it inside, away you go. So I think that's quite a fair price, and you can just use whichever one you want. Now, you don't get any software with that. There's no software and no boot disk. You have to supply everything, because I know a lot of people have already got this, so they don't need it. However, if you haven't, you want a complete system, 149 gets you everything. Now that's a 2 gig Pi. Now I will say, 2 gig I believe is enough. If you're building an Amiga, you can still jump in. You can still use Chrome. You can open to 4 or 5 tabs, open it all up. You can open a number of Linux applications. It doesn't affect the Amiga side, because the Amiga's got half a gigabyte of RAM. I mean, 500 meg of RAM. It's silly. You're never going to use that. So I think 2 gig would be enough if you're building an Amiga. But I know some people go, I need 4 gig, I need 8 gig. God knows why. But the option's there if you want to upgrade. I'm hoping to just buy a bunch of 2 gig ones and be done with it. Anyway, so you can always add on OS 3.1.4 if you want. but it does come with the Amiga XE license and Amiga Forever DVD pack. Right, UnAmiga. Yeah, so as you can see, I'm charging 20 quid more for the DVD pack basically, because that's pretty much what I paid for it. So we're not trying to make money out of the licenses. So you can see there's the UnAmiga. There's no boot card. So yeah, I think it's a reasonable price. Now bear in mind, all these prices include VAT. So if you've seen the prices, because Edu does not supply this direct, but he's not VAT registered, so his prices can be cheaper. Mine I am VAT registered, so of course that's unfortunately I wasn't for the last Kickstarter, but I had to for this because it was fairly successful. So we had to go VAT registered, which is a pain. Now, if you live outside of, I'm still trying to sort out what's happening with Brexit. I'm pretty confident I have to charge VAT to the Europe still. But outside of Europe, international, I'll be deducting that. So actually it's going to be cheaper. So it's going to be quite nice, especially for you Americans. You can knock 20% off the price. But then there's the MiSTix, of course. The complete pack price, you can see what you get underneath there. There's everything you're going to need. I mean, literally ready to go. But that's the compute unit. That's not the case, the power supply. You need a keyboard and mouse unless you've got your own. So it doesn't include the case, right? It says what it includes, okay? Because people will ask, does that include the case? No, it doesn't include the case. It's $399 for the pack. If you want the 128 gig now, that's really for people outside the Amiga community. The only real time you're going to need that is Neo Geo. Some of the cores on there do need it, but if you do want it, it's another 30 quid. And of course the MiSTix motherboard pack. Basically, if you want to buy the motherboard, the MiSTix motherboard on its own, I'm not selling it on its own, but I'll sell it with the mount frame and with the cables, so you can literally just, all you got to do is put your D10 Nano on it with your memory card, and you can connect it up. But with no operating systems, no nothing with that, so you need to build that yourself. But that will suit some people who've got everything. Right, so as you can see at the bottom, it says VAT. That all these include VAT. The price you paid on Kickstarter includes VAT. And I've got a little disclaimer at the bottom. These prices are subject to change if circumstances outside of our control change. That's just really in case I've made a boob. I don't think so. I've checked all these, I spreadsheet it out. But it's just in case, just to give me a little bit of wiggle room. But anyway, so hopefully, let's go back over to here so you can see the timings. Hopefully, well, first of all, thank you for backing. As I think I mentioned at the beginning, we've gone past 50,000, which is great news. My target really is 75,000, because 75,000 makes a difference. I can do this quite comfortably at 50,000. That's why it's budgeted that way. But there's certain things I want to do, and getting to 75,000, hence the stretch goal. The people who have bought the basic cases will get a few extra bits, save them a few quid. Yeah, so it'd be nice if we can get to 75,000. If we do reach it, which I'm not too sure now, but if we do reach it, maybe I'll do another one and give something for the deluxe pack people. But again, I want to thank you for backing this, and I look forward to shipping these out to you in due course. And I was 5 weeks late last time. Apologies for that, but everyone knows the story on that. But this time I think we'll be, if anything, we'll be early. But of course, July is the date. And remember, that's when I start. The date is when I start shipping, because I build these all myself. But I'll keep you informed as we go. And if there's anything else, I'm going to do a couple of live streams. I can do a couple of live streams before the end. But anyway, in the meantime, I know this is a long video, but I hope you enjoy it. Hope there's information in there you want, and just if you don't have to watch it all, just jump to the bit you're interested in. But there's a lot of interest. I think people are going to have trouble selecting between the FPGA boards. I really do. Or do I spend the extra? But yeah, anyway, have fun with that, and thanks very much for backing. Cheers, bye. Okay, so this time it's the Raspberry Pi 4 fitting kit. As you can see in the case, we've made a specific frame for where you can't see that, but I'm going to hold this up for you, make life a bit easier. So you can see here we've made a specific frame. You can see it comes in black and white. And what this basically does is holds the Raspberry Pi, and we have this little adapter board made by a company called Geek Pi, and that turns round the HDMIs and converts them to normal size HDMIs instead of the tiny ones, and puts everything on the back, and it's nice and neat and everything's there that you need. On top of that, we add this ATX power board, which we use in other products in the other Plus case. Normally it would power an Amiga, but in this case we've made a custom cable, so it comes from here, plugs into the Geek Pi board, which in turn powers the Pi. Now the idea of this is that you can then place it in the case like this with an SFX power supply. I know the SFX power supply is overkill, I get that, and it is more expensive, funnily enough, obviously. If you buy a cheap little power supply for that, it's about a tenner, and these are a bit more expensive than that. However, it starts to make sense when you're using the internal USB port and you're connecting into USB devices internally, powering hard drives and that kind of thing. It kind of makes a bit more sense, maybe even with a CD-ROM drive. The idea though is it gives flexibility. Now if you want to, you don't have to buy this. Okay, you could just blank that off and then just run it with the power connector at the back, but you're kind of missing the point of the case. You might as well put it in a little case then. So you have to think of this in a way, don't think of this as a case for the Raspberry Pi. That's the important thing here, is this isn't meant to be a case for Raspberry Pi owners to buy. The idea of this is it's a way of building an Amiga 3000 lookalike that is powered by low-cost Raspberry Pi, brings the cost down, so it uses emulation. So by having all this connected internally and built into here, you have great potential for building a really nice Amiga system, and that's the aim of this. So don't think of this as I'm selling a case to Pi owners, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense unless you want to recreate the look of the Amiga 3000 and run an Amiga emulation system. Now, there is I will put a link to take you to another video which explains our AMI hybrid system, which is a way of using Manjaro 64-bit Linux to power a seamless integration with AmiKit and Amiga Forever, or OS 3.1.4. and make a hybrid system, so you get the best of both worlds. You see an Amiga operating the fastest Amiga within, apart from unless you go onto PCs, but you pretty much the fastest normal low-cost Amiga you could build. But at the same time, you have access to Chrome, you have access to the Office packages that are available on Linux. We use Manjaro 64 at the moment. The reason for that is the Pi OS is not 64-bit. It's in beta, but it's not been released as 64-bit yet. Having said that, the only problem with the Manjaro at the moment is that the little internal USB port there is not active at the moment. We are looking into ways of making it active. On the Pi OS, it has the drivers for it, so it's ready to go, and then you can, use the internal USB. But yeah, I think it makes a nice little system. The main thing on this is the cost. There'll be a chart explaining the costs. I've already mentioned the fitting kit prices on the Kickstarter, but again, I'll make this all clear. I'm just trying to show you. But yeah, I think it makes a nice, if you think of it as a low-cost Amiga solution that looks like an Amiga, then I think that's the best way of thinking about it. The other good thing about using the Pi means you can use any kind of USB devices, because it's Linux. Now we're in the process of making these keyboards. These are custom keyboards, custom keycaps. The keyboard is one we found that we really like, and it's got this, and this has split the community, but it's got this jog dial which is for the volume control, and it's got the media playback buttons on it, and that does work within Linux, and it also works on the MiSTix as well. It controls the volume on the audio, but also we're having custom keycaps made which are Cherry MX compatible. So anything with Cherry MX switches, these have nice switches. They'll be coming standard. If you buy this keyboard to put these keycaps on, they come with cherry red switches, which are really nice, but you can supply your own. You can buy the keycaps from us to give you that Amiga look and feel. But ultimately you can put it on any cherry or cherry clone keyboard that you want to put it onto, which I think is that's the reason. It's just to give people options. And you'll see all the prices on the Kickstarter. The keycaps are £29. Not sure about the keyboard at the moment, but at the moment is it's £90 for that keyboard and the keycaps. And of course it comes in black and white, so you can have both colours. But again, it's to give you that feeling of an Amiga 3000, to give you but a huge amount of performance. The thing with the Raspberry Pi, ridiculous amount of performance. Now obviously you're going to see videos here to do with FPGAs, which are very, very accurate simulations and recreations of the chipset. Performance cannot get anywhere near this. This thing gives out over 1,000 MIPS, especially if you've got this fan on it. Okay, we intend building it with a fan on board so you can overclock it, and that'll be included in the price. So it will give you a seriously good performance. About 210 times the speed of a 3000. It's ridiculous. It's I mean, it's crazy speed. The performance of this thing is fantastic. The only thing you lose, there's only really one thing you do lose. You lose that frame accuracy on the timings, and so the big objects moving across the screen are not as smooth. Games are not quite as smooth. Maybe a little bit of latency. Well, I'm not sure about latency, to be fair. But you do gain a lot of things, and plus the fact this is the cheapest way of doing it. This really is the cheapest way. Now, to give you an idea, this is ballpark. I'll just give you an idea. This with a Pi, basically like that, with a 2 GB Pi, will be 149. Now, that will include the operating system, so you'll be completely legal. You'll be able to just get that, drop that into the wall, or we will build it for you. It drops into there, run it with the power supply, and you get the best of all worlds. And I think that, especially if you use an AMI hybrid, I think that's a great way of doing it. But you don't have to use AMI hybrid. There's others you can use. But yeah, on the subject of networking, obviously, it's Linux. It's got a high-speed network on it. Theoretically, there are 2 HDMI ports, so you can run 2 monitors. Obviously, the Amiga emulation is on one of those monitors, okay, unless you duplicate the monitor. But at the moment, it's only a single monitor, okay. I'm hoping that we might be able to get the RTG on one and the normal Amiga modes on another, but I don't know if that's technically feasible. But so at the moment the Amiga's only using one monitor, but you could then have an Amiga on one monitor and then just Linux on the other monitor, so you get the best of both worlds. But bottom line is, it's very important to understand this. Don't think of it as a case for a Pi. Think of it as a low-cost computing unit for a case to make it like the ultimate Amiga emulation system. Okay? Anyway, hope you enjoy that. Speak to you soon. Thanks so much. Hi, this is a section on the UnAmiga ITX for the Checkmate 1500 Mini. The UnAmiga goes back a little way, and it's actually turned into quite a wide range of products. It's created by Edu Arana and a team of very talented FPGA and firmware programmers. But it also builds on top of an awful lot of work that's been done in the FPGA field for Mini-Mig and all of the software that's created on the Amiga. So it started off with this, which was the UnAmiga, he called it the A1500 header. So basically what you did, you popped this into an Amiga 500, and it gave it, Amiga 500 case that is, and it gave it 1200 performance with AGA, etc. But utilising the usual things you would expect. So it's got on board VGA output, it's got a PS2 keyboard and mouse, but it's also got a couple of game ports, so you can plug in an Amiga mouse and an Atari Amiga type joystick. Stereo outputs, there's also a stereo 3.5 inch jack, And here's the boot on the back. So this is the start of the UnAmiga, which was a very economical piece of kit. And so I approached Edu with the aim of trying to talk him into doing an ITX board for me, which he did really quick. He turned it round in about 2 weeks, and that's what you can see in the case here. This is the first prototype. There are a few changes being made. For example, I previously said there was no real-time clock. It's going to have a real-time clock on it now. And also I've asked him to put on the original UnAmiga, it had, you can't see this here I'm afraid, but it had the keyboard header, so you could plug an Amiga 500 keyboard into it, and I've asked him to put that onto this board as well. And the reason is obviously with my Plus cases we do an extension case, so if you've got an Amiga 500 keyboard, or when the new ones come out, then you'll be able to, hopefully using one of our case, our keyboard case or future version, we'll be able to use that with this motherboard to complete the experience, to give you a really good Amiga experience. So the idea of this was to give you, as you see, the Mini is obviously Mini ITX form factor, and so therefore it's very small. It uses the SFX power supply, so you don't need to drive bay, but of course if you feel you need something to go on there, great. There is the SD card readers over on this side here. I've actually got on here an external, going to the back. Let me hold the board up for you so you can see. Part of the idea of this video is to explain and expand on what the UnAmiga can do in this chassis. So what we can see here is the UnAmiga. Just so you're aware, there's an ATX power connector goes on board. There's the actual FPGA. This has actually been increased in gate size from the original UnAmiga. It's now twice the amount of gates. That's allowed it to have RTG, which I'm going to show you in this video. This SFX power supply is obviously overkill, but it does make it nice and neat, and then they're not overly expensive, so I think it's a nice way of doing it. There's lots of pins on here, so you can plug in your power switch, your hard drive LED, and the and the power switch. I'm just looking around. A lot of these cables from power supply are not going to be used, but they're there in future if you possibly want to use them. But it's important to understand that this doesn't have USB on this board. So I like to call this is the hardcore Amiga fans board, okay, FPGA board, because it literally is, and in my opinion, it's pretty much a recreation of an Amiga in FPGA form with the kind of functionality you would have got with that board. Now, one thing we do have on here is this little serial board on here, which is a kind of a Wi-Fi serial. I will cut in a clip of showing that work. It's actually quite complex to set up, the actual software side, but it does give you, at least you can have a TCP/IP stack running at serial speed, so like the 38K, which is not super fast, but to be fair, getting data onto it and out off of it, FPGA, via FTP, I think it's pretty useful. Let's turn around to the back. Now it's probably quite tricky to see this. Now it's important to understand. It's important to understand this is still a prototype. The Kickstarter hasn't even finished yet. So you can see all the ports. The board is pretty much finished, actually, to be fair, but I haven't done the rear mounting panels. You can see on this, which is the Pi version, I've got a custom rear mounting bracket for it. And this one hasn't got it designed yet, because this is until we've actually nailed and finished this version, it's not worth making the panel. So also there'll be a couple of ports on the back. You'll notice also I've got this little SD card reader floating about here. That'll be a bit more secure. So that panel will be done by the time you order these cases. But you've got on here your VGA output. Okay, it's quite an old standard, but it does work, and it gives you a nice. You've got this functionality on board to have it output as 15 kilohertz, so you can press a button and it will double up to 31. which is basically a flicker fixer. So it really is like a 3000. You switch between 15 and 31 kilohertz. Here's your 2 ports: mouse, joystick, keyboard and mouse. Hopefully the colour's going to change to purple, make it a bit obvious. And then there's a stereo 3.5-inch jack on the outside here. So it's actually, it gives you, it's a lovely little board. And it is, I've got to be honest, it is my favourite because it is pretty hardcore. It's really aimed at Amiga people. You know, there are certain things that you have to do. Now I'm going to go through the pros and cons, and also I'm going to show you the kind of performance you can get out of it, as far as the display, etc. But let me go through some of the pros and cons. Right, I'll explain first of all the, let's say performance. Right, let's go for the performance. So the UnAmiga, as I said, it pretty much runs. It's like having a 50 megahertz 1200. Now obviously the case is meant to look like a 3000. So if you put it in them terms, it's on Sysinfo says it's 2.2 times the speed of a 3000. Now unfortunately it doesn't have an FPU, but I don't think that's a major deal breaker on this for most of the people who are going to be using this. So it's got 2 mega chip RAM, 20 mega fast RAM, and as I said, it's about 50, equivalent of a 50 megahertz 020, which, to be honest, is actually a really good little bump in performance, and I think especially for demos and games, and for some basic apps, I think it's absolutely fantastic. But a really important thing here is obviously it's got RTG. Because it's got more space and it's got a newer FPGA on board, you can have RTG. Now, I assume you understand that means retargetable graphics. But what that means, you can get a high-ish resolution display, which is really nice. So let's go through the pros. Right, so there's a low cost of entry to this system. Now, you know, it's not cheap, but you're buying FPGA, which is always a bit more expensive. So, but it does give you the absolutely accurate recreation of the Amiga. So it's literally like having an original Amiga. A Mini Mig now, that core is it's been around for a long time, so it's very stable and it runs great. Yeah, so accurate Amiga simulation. I don't like that word emulation on this one because this is hardware recreation. But you're basically simulating this Amiga, and it is very accurate. Mini Amiga has been around quite some time, so it's had plenty of time to stabilise, get reliable, etc. So, and you reap the benefits with this. It can also do, it's got full AGA support, OCS support and ECS support. Now if you don't know what that means, then maybe this isn't the board for you. But if you're, as I like to say, a hardcore Amiga fan, you'll understand that. And basically what it means is it can run any games, any demos from all the different chipsets, and it'll all work on here nicely, especially if you're using something like WHD Load, which I highly recommend. If you buy the pack, that's what it will come with configured. Also pro on this one, over the previous version of the UnAmiga, which was this really cool little one. Unfortunately, the number of gates were smaller on that. There is a new reloaded version, but this one's got 50 or 55,000 gates, and which enables it to do the RTG. Which, I mean, you'll see that when it's running. It absolutely makes a massive difference. Also, there's on the scroll lock button is the flicker fixer. So we're not sure which way around it's going to be. I think it's going to default to the flicker fix mode now because I've asked them to do that, because very few people are going to plug this into a 15 kilohertz monitor like an old one over here. Most of them are going to put it into a modern monitor with a VGA. You need the VGA. It's only VGA, but as you'll see, I'll be showing different monitors with this. But the press and scroll lock switches between 15 kilohertz and 31. So it is literally like the Amiga 3000 in the fact they had a switch on the back. You could switch between them. The other thing which is quite interesting is this got what the team call multi-core. So rather than just being a single core, which this version I've got here at the moment boots straight into Amiga, but you'll have the option to have multi-core. So you can run a small number of other cores, and the ones I've seen at the moment are the Commodore 64, the MSX, apparently there's a Spectrum next, and there's one or two. I think they will add to the cores. Now, that's if that's what you want to do. By default, this system will ship out with built-in Amiga because that's why we're building it. But there is potential there. It's not going to be as much as with the Mister or the MiSTix, but there will be some, and I think this will grow over time. Runs relatively cool. I've got it. Yeah, so basically because it's just an FPGA core, it actually doesn't run very warm at all. You see, there's no heatsink on here. There's no fan needed for the chip. It runs nice and cool. There's no problem with the temperature. Now, on the MiSTix, because it's got the ARM core on there as well, I do tend to put a heatsink on it and maybe a fan, just to keep that chip cool. But with the UnAmiga, there's no need. It hasn't got all that extra chip built into it. Right, so cons. Okay, you know, I have to tell you the positives and negatives. I mean, one of the things we do 4 different types of boards here, and I do have a chart, as you probably will have seen. There is a chart, and hopefully I'll put it on the end of this video or put it as part of the documentation, explaining the difference in chart form. But basically, now originally I did say there was no battery backed up clock, and I've spoken to Edu and he's going to add that in. So this will have a battery backed up clock. There won't be a battery on it. You'll have to stick a battery in it. That gets around the problems of shipping boards with a battery. But yeah, so that will have that. I've got here no network serial. Well, you don't get high speed. If you want high speed networking, you need to get either the Pi version board, which has very high speed networking, or the MiSTix, which uses a D10 Nano, which is more expensive. But this will come. It is, as I said, it's a bit tricky. We'll do a video on how to set it up. But once you've got this little Wi-Fi board set up, it will allow you to have a TCP/IP stack. You're only running at 38K, so it's almost like one of those parallel plug-in ones. It's not super fast, but it will allow you to have TP in. But if you want to do any major file transfer, just take the drive out, mount it on an Amiga emulator, and you can do all the file transfers you like at super high speed. I'll put here, difficult to get data on system. So once you set the thing up, it's not really difficult. I mean, you have, in an ideal world, the serial networking isn't going to be quick enough to do file transfer to get lots of data onto this thing. So, but all you have to do is you will get a license for Amiga Forever with this system. So all you have to do is install that on a PC if you've got a PC, and then you can pop this SD card into a reader, shove it into your PC, map it as a drive on the emulated Amiga, and you can transfer files across to it and then take it out. Once you've done it, take it out, put it back in, and away you go. So actually that's not really a con. That's it's not as straightforward as on the Mister. Yeah, so because it's not the core, the FPGA on here is about 55,000 gates. On the Mister, you've got like 110,000 gates, so you're not going to run all. They're never going to run all the cores that you can get on the Mister on this. But I think it's up to the team. We're not promising it. I'm selling this as an Amiga, and that's the core you're going to get. If you want to upgrade, you can upgrade it, and there will be more coming over time. And of course, the improvements will come over time, which is always a good thing. I don't know why this is a con. Actually, I don't know why this is a con. I suppose technically it is. But it's only got PS2 keyboard and mouse. Now, that to me actually is a positive. Now, the problem, the reason I put this as a con is you can't use USB. Now, obviously because there's no USB backbone system, it doesn't have an ARM controller on it to do all the USB, high-speed networking, all that. So that's why I say it's a hardcore Amiga's board. Having PS2, the only problem with them is they're tricky to get. So you can't just put a USB to PS2 adapter on it. They don't work. They very rarely work. The keyboard has to support the PS2 protocol. So it's quite tricky. The one thing about it is, now you notice, I mean, the one thing is they're actually quite cheap. I mean, I've got a white one here. I ordered this white one in. And it looks fantastic with it. Unfortunately, they're so rare, the white ones. This has actually got an Italian keycaps on it now, which is fine to me. It doesn't bother me. But you know, it's it's an interesting way. So if you want to get something a bit more, maybe get the black case, because these black keyboards. And now you know these. Let me get the light. So these black keyboards, they're actually quite nice. I mean, they're not very expensive. And I think we'll be stocking them and the matching mouse. We may do a little Amiga boing ball to cover up that silly Windows one, but it is PS2, and of course it does work. Now, why did I say I don't know whether it's a con? The reason is latency. Now, on other platforms, the USB will always give some latency. Now, with the MiSTix board, the latency is actually quite very low on it. It's, you know, similar to the other Mr. Projects. It's quite a very low latency on it, as low as it can be, but it's never as good as the PS2. So that's kind of important to understand. So you know with that there comes good points as well. And as for the cons, there's no USB support. So with the MiSTix, using the DE10 Nano, you get because it's got the ARM controller that handles everything, all the networking, all of the USB system. It does all of that, and it actually is a really useful thing to have. But it's a much more expensive system. This is not the cheapest one of them, but it's the lowest cost FPGA solution. So anyway, that's the actual the hardware, discussion of the hardware. So now let's go in and actually see it running. Okay, so let's go through this. I'm going to turn this on now. So this is the UnAmiga ITX. It's going to boot up. I've switched. By default, mine's set to 15 kilohertz. So by pressing the scroll lock, it converts into a higher refresh rate. So so give us a few seconds. Now, I've got this set to boot straight into RTG mode. So I'm doing this so you can see how long it takes. It's not too bad. It's about 25 to 30 seconds. You can see it's now loading. I've also got quite a high resolution image on here, which of course this is only 50 megahertz, and I'm running RTG, so it takes a little while for it to decompress the graphics. But if you don't do that, you just, for example, use a normal little small backdrop. Bang! It's really much faster. But I like this display that we're going to get. You're going to see in a second. Now, what we're running at here is a 1024 by 768 display. I've got this in 15-bit color. There you go, so it comes up nicely. Now if I set this to 256 colours, everything's even snappier. But it looks really nice in 15-bit, and I think it's actually a nice thing to see. So it gives you, as you can see, this artwork's from, okay, I had to stop this and remember his name, it's Jim Sash. Okay, I do love his artwork, and I like to have it as a backdrop. So it does mean it's quite big, and it takes a little while to decompress. But as I was saying, let me just show you. If you go in here now, two little tricks. If you really want to speed this up and you want your workbench really quick, simple way of doing this. What we're going to do? Well, let's show you how well this works. What we'll do is I'll give you a feeling for how fast this works in. It's 15-bit color, not 16-bit color. Okay. But if I, for example, open up Directory Opus, you can see it runs really nice and quick. But if I grab that and move it, can you see? Okay, so you can see how fast it's redrawing. And likewise, if I open up one of these, you see? So it works nicely. But let's go into preferences. I'm going to switch this to 256 color mode and give you a feeling for that. So we'll drop this down. Now we have to test it first. Now I'm running 3.1.4 on here, which has this test mode in it. Okay, so you can see it's happy with that. It won't let you save it otherwise, which is a great feature, I have to say. By default, this will come with Amiga Forever, but there'll be an option to upgrade to 3.1.4. And what I'm doing with the licenses, I'm adding them on at cost price. So we're not trying to make money out of the software here. Now you can see what it's doing now. Let me just press my auto reset. and we go to here, and I'm just going to do this edit function, and I'm going to just bring it down a few steps, and you'll see after a minute, or after a few steps, it will disappear. So see, it's disappeared. Okay, it's accepted that one. So what we'll do is we'll say we'll accept that. You'll need to learn to understand how you. Now remember what I said about hardcore Amiga fans? If you're not, don't mess around with this. This is really for those people. Right, so we'll save this, and we'll do a reboot. Okay. Okay, so now that's using the Picasso tools. Now what all this will do is, when it reboots the machine up, my monitor will go, oh, okay, and I'll stick it in the right place. So I'm going to flick through different monitors, so you can see the kind of how you just tweak the settings for your own use case. Right, so it's rebooted. If I press my auto reset, can you see it's kind of squared itself up now, and it's quite happy now. So as I said, now we're running 256 color mode. In fact, let me just double check. Just make sure. I think we are. If I set it, yes. So that's in 256 color mode. But can you? I don't know if you can tell this, but it's a lot quicker now to update everything. The screen, the refresh is much quicker. Things open up a lot faster. Okay, programs, graphics. It does what under 256 mode it does. It's a little bit more snappy. 15 kilohertz looks. I mean, to be fair, on this you probably can't tell the difference. But when you're running it in 15-bit color mode, it's much nicer, and it looks nicer, but it's a little bit slower. But so the 256 color mode is absolutely brilliant. Now, where you do notice it maybe is if you click on Eagle Player, for example. Now, I'm showing you this so you understand, okay? But I think that, look, I'll be honest, this is my favourite of all the systems. Okay, I'm not going to kid about with this. This is my favourite out of all 4 systems, which I use the most. So, but we've got this nice audio player here, Eagle Player. I always have it switched to the 24. I love that 24-bit display. Let's turn the volume up a bit. Obviously, it's using internal speakers. Right, now I'm going to show you one of the reasons why FPGA is so important, but you may not be able to see this because I'm recording this at 30 frames per second, and these demos are going to run at 50. So this monitor is actually syncing at 50 frames a second. But my favourites are these. Now, what I always say is, what the important thing to understand is with... let me turn the volume down, might be a bit loud. This is one of my favourite demos, and I really like this. But if you look, the key thing about this is this text that comes across the bottom of the screen. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but it's the difference between FPGA and emulation. What I'm seeing here is so smooth, it's ridiculous. Now, I know people say you need the CRT monitor to get the best out of this, but actually, do you know what? I mean, this is a flat panel. Okay, this is a flat panel, and in fact it's a very old flat panel, and all panels have the VGA input. But hopefully this is coming across, but that is so perfectly smooth, it's wonderful, and that's why people like FPGA. Okay, so let's give this a few seconds and then we'll move on. Right, so of course you've got that. Now let's go in and show where it really shows a benefit. Now I've got to be careful with this because this is my son's favourite game. Although he's turned into a bit of a Marble Madness fiend now. So hopefully he won't come running if he hears this. We'll turn the volume down a bit because he might come running. Now, but you hopefully can see just how smooth the scrolling is because it's just using that wonderful area move functionality that's in the Amiga. And you don't get this, I've not seen the Pi emulate this. I've not seen even my high-end Windows PC get it as smooth as this. And that's why people like FPGA. It's everything. It's the smoothness and it's the latency. It's everything. It's just like the real thing. But of course, you know, these old machines are becoming a lot more expensive because they're becoming a lot more rare. I mean, my machines here, I mean, I'll never sell them, but they're getting silly money nowadays, and this is a great way of doing it. So you get a brand new machine that will last for hopefully as long as the old machines, but you get the same benefits of the feel of the system. Okay, so let's end that one. Come back into here. Right, so now what I want to do is, so that's in a 1024 display. And you can see, I mean, let me just boot something. Let me load up Shapeshifter. Now, I'll show you Shapeshifter because I think it's a good thing to look at. Let me just double check, make sure I've got it in the right screen mode. Yep, that's fine. And we'll start Shapeshifter. So this is to show you the performance of what you can expect from the UnAmiga. As I said, it's a 50 megahertz 030, 50 megahertz 020, but with AGA. And so you can see I've got my 8-bit colour. The Mac's quite happy sitting there running in 8-bit colour. Yeah, I know it's not happy because I didn't reboot properly. How bad of me. But now you can see we've got Macintosh. It's a Macintosh emulator. I don't want to make too much of a big thing about this. But here we go. Switch back. And we're back into the Amiga. Switch across. If I can find the key. And then we go back over to the Macintosh emulator. So I'm not going to go into it, but it's Shapeshifter. Okay. Let me close this down. I'll shut it down nicely this time, so it'll be happy with me. Shut down. Now it's very important to understand on this one. I'm running Shapeshifter 7.5. I think 7. No, not Shapeshifter. Mac OS 7.5. I think it is. If you run 8 Mac OS 8, it's a little bit slow on this. The 7.5 runs beautifully, okay, runs really nicely, but 8 is a little bit more sluggish, so just bear that in mind. Having said that, on the MiSTix, 8.5 runs better, okay, because it's got that little 30% more performance, 25%, and it does help, but even on that one I still run 7.5. If you want to run 8, buy a Vampire, okay. Okay, so on here, as you can see, let me just show you the show config. Okay, your computer is an Amiga 1200. I don't know if you can read that, but anyway, so it's telling me it's an Amiga 1200. Now, let me run a couple of other applications just to get a feel for it. Programs. So obviously we can run RTG applications, which is wonderful. We can also obviously run. Let's run Brilliance. Now these old monitors are actually really nice. I've got to say, it's not. If you can get a 4:3 aspect ratio monitor, it is a nice way of running this. If you've got an old CRT, it's even better. But let's grab an image. Okay. And so here we go. Let's turn off the display. Well, actually, can leave it on. And then, as you can see, it's brilliant. And I mean, it really is brilliant as well. It's such a fantastic piece of software. This. Yeah. So I think is it. I was getting them confused. Which one it is? Is it all? Yeah, that's right. Up, down. See. Brilliant. Switch back over, and you get back into the workbench. It's an Amiga. Okay. Yeah, so the performance, I really like it. I mean, it's a nice performance. I mean, if you're an Amiga 3000 fan, which is potentially why you're maybe buying this case, if you're thinking later on you want to get an Unamiga, now bear in mind this review really counts for all the Unamigas, because there's another one, which I'll put a picture up, which is the standalone version. It's going to be a lot cheaper to buy that than this. I've got to be honest, there's no point beating around the bush, okay? This is a bit more expensive because you're buying this. Not cheap to make case, but you're trying to build an experience and a look and a feel of what you want to create. But that standalone is going to come along, and it's going to be pretty much the same performance as this. In fact, I think it's identical. So it's the same FPGA board. So there you go. It's a fairly good, and I'll put a picture on there for you. I've ordered one as well. Now I am looking into, if you buy that, you decide you want to put that in here. In theory it should fit, that's why I've ordered one. I can't guarantee it until I've seen it and tested, but we will try everything we can to allow you to put that into here if you wanted to. It won't be in any other Mini. I'm not making a kit for other cases obviously, but I would recommend, if you do want to get that and you're thinking of this, buy the Mini ITX version. Now the ITX UnAmiga will only be available for myself. Edu's asked me to take care of that, and I'm obviously quite like that because I obviously want to set up the cases. So the ITX version is only for me, but I do think it's a great thing. Anyway, what I want to do now is I want to show you on widescreen monitors so we can explain maybe some of the issues you're going to have when you're using it, and some of the benefits as well. So let's jump into that now. Okay, so now what we've got, I've plugged in an AOC widescreen monitor into the UnAmiga, and I've actually, if you remember the adjustment I had to make in Picasso just to move it down, I've moved it back up again and set that so that it's now looking correctly in this. It's important to understand some monitors, all monitors, you can switch to wide or 4:3 mode. Some monitors just figure it out. It depends on your monitor. I'm going to show you another monitor that doesn't quite work as well as this. But so what we've got is a 1080. We've got a 4:3 aspect ratio video display, 1024 768. But you want to see it running obviously on widescreen. So I've already got this set up. If I go into Picasso, and you can see I've got my 1280 by 768 mode. Let's switch it into 256 and have a look at that. If I press the edit, now you see I've actually already set this up previously, so it remembers it. But you can see now it's filling it beautifully. And what I can do now is go back in. I'll close this, and we'll go into preferences, and I'll switch this into 1280 768 mode. Go into here, let's do it in 8-bit. We have to test it obviously as it's not going to be happy. You can see, it comes up nicely. Now this is using the standard Picasso 96 drivers from Aminet, just so you know. Now obviously I've got a background picture that's designed for, that's laid out for a 4:3 aspect ratio, so you can see it's reproducing it on the right hand side. But what I want to do is, while we're doing this, remember I was saying to you about the fact that you can see how long it takes to load that image, okay, with the processing power you've got. But let's do a little thing here. We're going to go into workbench pattern, and I'm going to change that picture to be leather, okay. Let's switch to okay, keep it at best. Let's test it and see how quick that comes up. Yeah. So now that's going to be a lot quicker. If you don't want those full color, I recommend you don't use really high-end JPEGs, 24-bit JPEGs. They just takes a long time to decode. But if you want to have just a simple backdrop, the refresh speed of this will be really quick. Okay, so for example, if we do this, open up Directory Opus, it just refreshes everything really quick. Okay, as you can see, just works lovely. So you can also, I don't have it on here, but you can also run you'll see on the MiSTix overview, I've got a version of a slightly modified version of Coffin OS. It's taken out a couple of bits, but it works quite nice. I obviously can't ship it with Coffin OS for obvious reasons. But it does, and it will work on this, but I think it'll be just a little bit slower. So go and have a look at the MiSTix if you want to see that running. But so if you're running standard workbench with RTG, I think this works lovely. Let's have a look at the speed now. We'll find out also if I've got the display. Yeah, this is running in widescreen, so he's kind of thinking, oh, this is widescreen display. This is one of the things I was mentioning. You can easily switch this. I'll do that in a second actually. So let's have a look at speed so you can see how fast this thing's actually running. And as you can see here, 6830 at 2.27 times of an A3000. As for 1200 though, the standard 1200 compared to this 8.6 times the speed of a standard 1200. So you're getting quite a big speed bump, and you're obviously with the AGA, etc. Let me quit that. Let's run the demos so you can see it. So if I run a different one here, let's run Demons. And what I'm going to do is, as I said, some monitors recognise it's a 4:3 aspect ratio, some don't. So for example, this has gone, oh, it's 4:3, I'll just make it widescreen. So, but we can switch that. If we know we're going to be using some, let me turn the, oh, I'll do that in a minute. I do love this demo. Right, so I've got here a widescreen setting. I'm just going to change it to there. But of course that means the whole monitor's now running in 4:3. Okay, but again you can see how smooth this is. But now if I quit this and jump out of this, now you'll notice it's squished up. You can actually still use it, to be fair. It's still very usable. So if you're just going to use this as a program loader, but if you don't want to be, if you know you're going to be mostly doing 4:3, for example, if I go into, well, let's do pinball again so we can see how smooth it is. And then we can have a nice, let's choose pinball. I'm playing this so much it's ridiculous at the moment, but it's nice and smooth now. Okay, depends what you're doing again. If you're going to be using this in a lot as in widescreen, then set widescreen mode like I just showed you. But what I'll do is I'll just switch this back and we'll go into 1080 because most of the time I tend to run it on the other monitor, the 4:3 monitor. So let me just, I'll have to test this first because otherwise it won't let me save it. Yeah, that's working fine. I do like this feature, I must admit, I really do like that feature with the OS 3.1.4. As I said, I will make that as an option, you'll be able to get that. But there you go. So let's do, in fact, actually, I'm actually gonna now turn this back. I'm gonna put this into widescreen mode because I like it on widescreen mode. Now again, your mileage will vary on this. Okay, you may have one that adapts nicely, may not. As you can see, the 1024 is shrunk in. The widescreen will fill. So if I now switch back to 1280 and save, I'll just use it for now. And come back into here, so now it fills the display nicely, and you can see now it's loaded up those backdrops much quicker. Okay, but they don't look as nice as having a nice backdrop. Right, so now let's show you a monitor where things don't quite go to plan. I'll pause this and we can see that. Okay, so now let's show you on a monitor where it doesn't quite go to plan. Key thing here is that the 1080p mode seems to work on all monitors. Okay, so that's, for most users, I think is a great mode anyway, so it pretty much modes. And I also think, I'm just going to double check on this one. Yeah, let's go down and I'm going to switch it. Yeah, this is set to 4:3 mode. So on this monitor, if I was to switch this into, see now that's a 1080p by 768, but with this monitor it fills the whole screen with it. Okay, so it's not auto recognized. No, I know what that is. It's just going squish. Okay, so be aware of that with monitors. Again, as I've said, this is purely for Amiga, hardcore Amiga fans, and they know what to do with all this. So there are better solutions if you're not and you just want to just be up and running. Don't buy this. Buy another one. This, as I said, this is hardcore stuff. So right. So let me just switch this back in. And what we'll do is we'll go to picture and I'll switch this into. But no, I'll tell you what. I'll leave it in widescreen. Actually, that's a good point, because now this one has another slight problem in that when I go into, I want to run the widescreen version. Okay, switch this, let's select, and we'll go into edit. Does this. And as it stands at the moment, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. So let me just go down to picture. If I switch this into, you see, so it's in 4:3 mode, still the same problem. I'm sure it's just a setting So some monitors will work with the widescreen modes, and some it's just a frequency issue, okay, to do with the way it's generating the signal. Some monitors have, the other widescreen monitor work perfectly. This one's a bit twitchy, and but as I said, if you work on the basis that 1024 works fine. If this is an issue, don't buy this one. You know, this may well be addressed very soon, so I'm just letting you be aware of it, that on a widescreen monitor sometimes it doesn't always work brilliantly. In a widescreen mode, the 4.3 ones, I haven't found a monitor where it goes wrong, so the 1024 768 RTG mode works fine. And of course all of the standard modes will also work fine if I run C-bit. Yep. And I've got this switch to 4.3 aspect mode, and you see it's running beautifully. So just run 4.3 if you've got a monitor like this. Having said that, again, it could be it's just a driver issue, a display issue, or maybe a core update. I don't know. But at the moment, as it stands, I'm running this 4.3 aspect, and it will run fine. So you shouldn't have any problems. I just want people to be aware. There's a little bit more involved in this, and the Amiga owners are used to messing around with Picasso modes, so it's fine, but I don't want anyone thinking it's going to be instantly going to work with everything. The other solutions will have less problems, as you'll see, but you know when you run an FPGA, you're getting down to hardware levels, so you're getting into that kind of realm, so maybe emulation will suit you. Anyway, conclusion, I think the UnAmiga, as I said, the UnAmiga is my favourite. It really does feel like an Amiga, and I think even to the point where, you know, the performance is on par with a reasonably high-end Amiga. It's got your AJ graphics, you've got RTG. I just think it's wonderful. So it's my choice, but you know that. It's really up to you to see what suits you. Okay, thanks very much. Speak to you soon. Interesting one. When I was talking to Edu to create the Mini ITX version of UnAmiga, around the same time we've been discussing about the D10 Nano, or the MiSTix. I built up my own MiSTix to see what it was like as far as emulating computers. My interest is more about the recreation, everyone, the recreation, emulation, whatever you call it, but the hardware recreation of old computers. And the D10 Nano was created by Intel, and it's an FPGA based system, and it is amazing for what it can actually do. I mean, the story on this is that the chip on here, the FPGA chip, but if you buy it separately, it's 3 or 4 times far more expensive than the actual card is with it on. So it was done by Intel as a training tool for people to program FPGAs. So it's obviously been used by the retro community, and you can do some fantastic things with it. So this case has been built obviously for any Mini ITX system. So we've decided to develop a Mini ITX mount frame for the MiSTix. Now most of you are probably more used to something like this, which is my other MiSTix device. It's basically a D10 Nano, and it's got a couple of different boards on it that give it USB support, and on top one gives it a VGA output, stereo audio output, etc. It also gives it a user port, and there's a number of things you can build with these different boards that you attach to the D10 Nano. What Edu's done here, he has added all of them onto the Mini ITX board. Now this is prototype revision 1, okay, and a lot's changed. So I'm going to give the specs of the version 2 prototype, not this one, because obviously this was the first test. The version 2 one is going to have, on the rear, it's going to have 4 USB ports. Also a game port, because the game port is using a USB port, so that's 5. And internally there'll be 2 USB headers, an extra 2. So you'll have these 2 extra USB ports, which you can use either, you probably can't see it here, but I've got an internal adapter. In fact, let me show you if I turn it that way round. Here we go. Okay, so on the back here now, you have to ignore the fact that there's people pointed out, obviously said, well, there's no back plate. Well, no, because we haven't finished this yet. We finished this one and it's got the back plate done. Okay, when the new version comes in, I'll have a custom back plate made to close that all off. So at the moment, you've got the Ethernet here and HDMI cables, which are going to be panel mounts. That'll all be closed, have the holes for them, and also a hole for the USB. Sorry, it's not USB, it's a user port. It just looks like a USB connector. You'll notice on here, on the left hand side, the half height panel to mount a couple of USBs, which will connect internally on the board. So this is a really nice little board. It's obviously, unlike these which are powered, you have to have an external power connector for it with two connectors plugged in. These two hole barrel connectors. On here we have an actual ATX power connector, which obviously uses the SFX power supply. But of course that means you've then got power connectors. If you do want to put internal USB devices, you've got room and power to power those. Basically it makes just a nice little computer system that looks very retro because it looks like an Amiga 3000 in black or white. On top of that, you've also got access to then being USB, one of our custom keyboards with Amiga keycaps, and of course they come in white as well. The other device I was talking about was one of these, which is just one of those little SD card readers with a USB on the front, so that'll take a couple of ports, and then you can plug that in the front and see how this is mounted in here. This one here is actually the wrong one, but it's just there for spacing reasons. But so you'll be able to plug one of these in there and have them have that at the front, or you can have a couple of these on the back. Ultimately, the choice is yours. So we think that's quite nice. If you wonder how come the cables, I mean it's fairly obvious, but a couple of people had pointed it out. I don't understand why, but so we have these cables. There's the HDMI, goes to a cable, comes to a panel mount at the rear, and there's the Ethernet one, plugs into Ethernet, and again it's got a panel mount which is screw onto the back of the plate. No, I think it's lovely. There's going to be a demo in a second to show you how this runs, but I'm actually putting that through my capture card, so you can actually see that from the capture card and show you how the Amiga runs on that. Anyway, hope you enjoy this, and let's get on with the next bit. Okay, so realistically, this, if you're going for FPGA and money's no object, this is, well, if money's no object, get Vampire. Okay, but having said that, this fits in the middle of the FPGA systems that you can build. So at the lower end you've got the UnAmiga ITX, which I still think is my favourite because it just seems like a pretty hardcore little Amiga. At the higher end you've got the Vampire, which has got blazing performance, and in the middle you've got the MiSTix. The great thing about the MiSTix is that you're getting about nearly 3 times the performance of a 3000. So it's like a 60, 70 megahertz 1200 020, which is pretty damn good. I think for most people it's actually the kind of the sweet spot. If you know, because most people want to play demos, play games, and do some basic things like, you know, the audio and all the graphics, that kind of thing. They're not really heavily intensive stuff. But on the top of that, you've obviously got access to all these other cores. Anyway, let's go through some pros and cons. I've got my little list here. Right, so pros. So on the FPGA chip is an ARM processor. Now the ARM processor is a hard-coded one, but basically what it allows it to do is networking, USB support, keyboards, all that kind of thing is supported through Linux, the HDMI, etc. So that's an absolutely fantastic thing about it. But anyway, so it's got 110,000 LEs, and basically that gives you tons of room to put all kinds of stuff on this board. So now they've actually got Neo Geo. So you've technically got I think it's about 50 computer cores. It's old computer cores, which is absolutely wonderful. And I don't know how many arcade cores there are. There's a load of arcade cores, but also interestingly, there's a load of consoles, the old retro consoles on there. I can't give you a list because it's just too many to go through. So if you're building just an Amiga, this will make a great system. But on top of that, you've got all these other cores. There's also a 486 core which runs Windows 95 and all the games, and that's running at 90 megahertz. It's amazing what this thing will do. I think it's probably the best all round. But anyway, so that's that. So the next thing, of course, it's got RTG. So you're going to see a demo of RTG, but it's got RTG, and it's slightly faster than on the UnAmiga. And it also does, I think, up to 24 bit. Same kind of resolutions: 1024 768 by 12 and 1280 by 760. But it's a bit faster, and it does run a bit quicker. Network access on this. Now you can theoretically assign the TCP/IP to use this. I haven't actually got that up and running, but I don't bother because all I use it for is FTPing into the system so that I can upload new software, cores, games, whatever from my main machine. And so you get a really nice network, either a Wi-Fi or an Ethernet cable. You get a really good way of networking into this system. So it is an absolutely brilliant little system. Display filtering. I love display filtering. So one of the things is if you're going to run these cores on an HDMI, it shows, because it's such good, the HDMI is such good quality and high resolution, it shows up all the blocks, the pixels. But they have these really nice filters you can put on there, scanning filters, and I use a bicubic one. And I really like that. Some people will hate it, but you can do things like CRT scanline effects, that kind of thing. And there's loads of ways of filtering it, making it look really, really good. I mentioned the 486 emulation. I mean, that is amazing. Well, the cons are an interesting one. It's higher price than the UnAmiga. I think if I'm going to put a chart up and it will show you that the average one of these, if you build this kind of spec system up, you're talking about £300 to £350. It doesn't include obviously Amiga's operating systems, the official licenses. I'll be selling the whole thing for £399, so it's a bit more expensive, but you do get more, and everything you need that's basically built onto here is built onto the board. And it's also, I think, neater in a nice, you don't have to put it in this. Well, you do initially because I won't be selling the boards separately to start with, but later on we will, and then you can use a cheaper case if that's what you want. Yeah, so the RAM, as I said, we put in 32 megabytes of RAM, but there's a 64 one and 128. For some of the Neo Geo cores, you need 128 mega RAM. That's just the way it is. They're quite expensive, funnily enough. About £50 for the 128. Okay, so one thing is the heat. These FPGAs, because they've got an ARM core and the FPGA, they do run a bit warm. Depending if you're really pushing it, they can get quite hot. Well, hot's not like an x86 kind of hot, but they do get quite warm. So you notice on here I've got a copper heatsink. The new version of the board, this little adapter board here that you can see, which is the pin connection between that board and the back board, will have a mount so that you can mount on it a fan, okay, and there'll be a power point, and that will just basically blow cool air over that FPGA heatsink, and we'll throw one of them in. Yeah, but that's I mean, it's not really con. It's just if you're using a high performance CPU, you're going to generate heat. Okay, so let's move over to the actual demonstration now. Thank you. Hi everyone. I'm just going to do a quick run through of the MiSTix interface, the software, etc. As you can see, it's disappeared. Let's bring it back. So, it's tricky with the capture card. So the great thing about the MiSTix is you've got these two outputs. You have the HDMI output, assuming you've got the right device like a MiSTix or one of the analog output boards. So you have a VGA output, but also you've got an HDMI output. Now I'm just using the HDMI here, but it does mean that certain things I can't show you because my capture card can't capture native Amiga screens, etc. Those kind of things. So I'm just going to give you a run through of why the MiSTix is worth the upgrade, the extra cost. And so you hopefully get a feel for it. If you've not heard of the MiSTer, if you know about the MiSTer, then this is just scoot forward and just ignore this. But if you're new to the MiSTer, now I think it goes without saying I am a massive fan of the UnAmiga, and I can't deny it. It is cheaper than the MiSTix. The MiSTix is more expensive, but the MiSTix is more impressive. It has a whole load of new extra features. It also has go to sleep. It's got networking, so you can FTP into it. Don't think of it as networking stack as such. Think of it as a way of getting to the machine from your main machine and transferring cores, transferring files, and that kind of thing to it. But it's if a retro fan who wants to experience retro hardware as accurately as possible, the FPGA solution is pretty much the best. And the great thing about the MiSTix is a huge amount of cores that are out there for it. So it's also a little bit fast, about 30%-ish fast, 20 to 30% faster than the UnAmiga. But it's also more expensive. Right, so what we've got here is, I'm going to just do a quick reboot. For those that want to know, if you want to do it on the keyboard, it's Shift Control Alt. That restarts the MiSTer. It is nice if it comes up with a picture. Sometimes doesn't want to come up with a picture. You can have these wallpaper backdrops. No, it's not doing. It's not playing game now. Okay, fair enough. If you press F1, scoot round, and you can see there's a whole lot of different screens, black, and then you get this thing which is the default, and then you come into here, and sometimes you get a picture, but it's let's get a picture. Go on, give me a picture. There you go, it's a picture. I like it with the pictures. Right, so you're in the main. This is not a tutorial, it's just to show you. So I'm going to pick like one of each. So let's go into arcade. Now there's a ton of cores on here. Now I'm not going to do a tutorial on how you get these cores on here because it obviously involves copyright material, which I'm not going to get in that whole scenario. There's plenty of tutorials on how to get these cores. And that goes for the same with all of them. Now, as I've said before, when we ship the machines, they will, as far as the Amiga's concerned, it will come with a fully licensed copy of Amiga Forever with all the licenses you need. So you'll be completely official, nothing to worry about. And we include them at cost price. So to keep the cost down, because we don't want to make money out of the licenses. Anyway, so what we've got here is, as you can see, there's a whole load. I can skip through. I mean, there's literally tons of these. But what you can see Space Invaders Midway. I mean, look, there is loads Super Zax. I mean, most people probably know I'm not really a games player, but what I do like, here we go, right. What I'm going to do is the one I love, now, well, actually, Defender. I tell you what, let's do Gallagher. I was actually going to do Arkanoid, but let's do Gallagher. I'll run Gallagher. Yes, so what I'm doing is I've just got one of these clone Xbox controllers because it's got, if you use one of these, it's got pretty much everything you need on it. I also have one of these big board ones with really nice key switches. Now this is, I mean, this is as simple as it gets. Hopefully you should be hearing the sound. Press go. I'll give it a quick shoot. I actually do play my little boy. Some of you know I've got he's not quite 2 yet, but he absolutely loves. He loves the arcade games. And he loves to try and play them. He's kind of getting into it, but I have to play. It's like my older kids that when they were little, the only time I ever replay arcade games is to entertain the kids. So when they grow up, I love that. There you go. That's pretty rubbish. Right, so I'm going to do Shift Control Alt reboot the core again. So that's a core, an arcade core. But let's go into something interesting. Now I've got to remember which one of these were. Oh yeah, okay. So before I'm going to go into the Amiga, probably last of all, I want to show you the 486 one, which is a lot of people want to play on a 486, and this core is absolutely brilliant. It runs about 90 megahertz. So you have an option. This is going to go into a boot menu. So if I've got this big setup, which I can't tell you who gave it to me, but I'm very grateful because it helps me to demo. we're going to this as a launch program, so you can see there's absolutely tons of games. I mean, it's a 486. Okay, it is absolutely wonderful, and of course if you like games. Right, but let's. What I want to do is Alt File Exit just to show you, and let's boot into. In fact, actually, what I can do, let's reboot that core. You press one of the buttons and reboot the core, and then I'm going to run Windows so you can see it running Windows. I've found that it will run up to 800 by 600. Now it's not meant to be a PC, but it is great if you want to feel like what it was like back in the day with the 486 90 megahertz. This gives you a really nice feel for it. So as I said, I'm more interested in the computer side of things, and have been able to run an old core like this, I think is absolutely wonderful. Again, this has been set up for me with a whole load of stuff on here. There we go, open it up. So you can see, I mean, it's just Windows 95. And this one's obviously got quite a lot of stuff on it. Now, what you do is with this, if I press F12, and that's not F12, is it Alt F12 or is it? No, there we go. So you can see, if you scroll down, I've got a couple of DOS images that are stored as a VHD, which are virtual hard drives, if you didn't know that. And you can also map them in, but audio and video, you can see all the aspect ratio, change of VSync and that kind of thing. But it's a pretty powerful. I'm not sure if this is the one with the cache update. I suppose it would be hardware boots and CPU clock, RAM size. Yeah, it's got the caches on, so that's why it's working quite nicely. So it just gives you a really nice experience. I really, oh look, in the Explorer. Right, so if I shut down there. Now, it's important to remember you really do want to shut this down, because before I did this demo, I'd forgotten previously I just shut the core down. Of course, it don't like that. And I wanted to recheck all the hard drives because it is just like a Windows machine. Right, so let's reboot the core. So that's the AOC. Now let's go into consoles. Now let's do a complex one. Let's go Neo Geo. Now this I've only got 32. Now when we ship these, they're going to, if I do a complete system for you, which is only going to be a certain number, I don't know how many we're going to do of these, but I'm going to ship it with 32 meg, but there will be an option because the RAM is actually very expensive. So I'm going to, the 128 will be, 28 meg will be an option. I'll try and make it as economical as possible, but well, you can look up, see a difference in price. But 32 meg is plenty for most things. However, the Neo Geo does push it a little bit, but not all the games. Some of the games are fine, but let's try one that things like Metal Slug. Again, because I'm using the same controller, it's already pre-mapped. Yeah, you should be hearing the sound. Hopefully, my audio is a little bit louder. Here we go. So a little more. Now I am rubbish at this. So I'm just now. I suppose the important thing to bear in mind is this: that I'm waiting for someone to join in. The important thing to bear in mind is this: that whilst the game is probably running 50-60 frames a second, I'm only capturing at 30, so it can mess up. So you might not actually see the benefit of it. I actually don't think he's running out of line. Oh no, he is. I've got an AI. Oh god, that means I've got to fight someone. Yeah, I'm really rubbish at games. But I mean, even I've got into this. Anyway, it runs great. I mean, they really are good. Right, let's. In fact, actually, what we do is we just. Oh, no, don't do that. Let's load up another core. See, I would have done. Oh, what's this? Yeah, see, I'd like to do Metal Slug. The only thing is, I've got a feeling it's not going to run. It's not going to have enough memory to actually run. Yeah. So, if you're going to want to run, there's the Neo Geo. But if you're going to think of running Neo Geo, you need the memory. Okay. You can see how nice this looks. Really
Metal Slug.
And one good thing about this is if I go into here and I load, I just want to see video mode. Scan down. Here we go. Right, this is scale filter, upscale, I have it bilinear. Now, some people aren't like this. I really do, because if you look at the display, it looks smooth. And I really like, because instead of being completely square pixels, of course you can do this. Scale effects here. You can put a little bit of CRT lines in, get them deeper, turn them off. Let's put that one. I like it smoothed. Oh, there you go. I don't know how well this is going to work, because it did say about memory, it's probably not going to work on this list. Okay, so be prepared for that, because I've only got 32
Mission
more.
1. Start.
Oh, I thought this was going to work very fast. But this was right? It's probably because it's first. But yeah, it's fine. But doesn't it looks great. Let's blow up the camera. Let's see that. So, but there is a ton of cores on here, and what you're paying for with this is, don't forget, this is an ongoing thing. Now, forgive me for mentioning the UnAmiga as well, but I think it's best to have it in context. The UnAmiga is also having development work and having new cores, but I don't think it'll ever reach this level. It might, because there's about 3 or 4 different versions of the UnAmiga now, so you never know. Fingers crossed, one of the reasons for supporting it. I think it may end up getting more and more cores. They've got 5 cores at the moment, but this is just there's a boatload, and there's a lot of work being done on this. So it is annoying because I wanted to put the picture up, because there you go, nice picture. Right, so we had the console. Let me see one that's really hilarious. I don't know if this is going to work. Oh yeah, look, is it out there? I do not know how you use this, but I love the fact that I don't know what you're supposed to do with it. I really don't know. Should look it up, but that is, to me, that's really cool. Right, let's escape this. Another picture. Right, what I want to do now is, so I've shown you the a console, I've shown you a computer, and I've shown you an arcade, but what I really want to show you is Mini-Mig. And this is the reason for my interest in this, is to make an Amiga system, FPGA based Amiga system. You gonna come up? There you go. But the great thing with this now, the problem we're going to have, because of my capture card, when I open up an Amiga, anything with an Amiga mode, I can't show it. My capture card won't capture it, unfortunately, the way it's set up. So I'm going to show you RTG stuff, basically. So what we've got here is, and this is the RTG. Now, if I go into system, now you'll notice I'm running Coffin OS. I could never ship it, I'm afraid, and I love what they've done with this, but I can't ship it because I'd be an instant target for lawyers. But it is great, and it is out there in the world. There's a couple of tweaks you need to make, only minor little tweaks, and if people are interested, then because this was actually created for me. There's a couple of minor little tweaks. Theoretically, you can actually set it up. It is possible to set it up with networking. But that's something. Sorry if I'm shifting about. If I look too shifty, I keep forgetting to look at the camera. Yeah, it's not something I can ship. I can't ship it with it, unfortunately. But we are putting a nice little package together that you can just add games, add demos, and it will run with something like Tiny Play, I think it's called. And so we'll set that up for you, and then and again you'll have the operating system, because it will come with Amiga Forever version 8. So it'll be official. But anyway, so you can see these are the games that I play, my little boy. He loves these games. His favourite at the moment is Pac-Man, although actually this hasn't got the... he really likes Marble Madness. But again, I can't show you them because you won't be able to see it. Anyway, let me just go in here. So for example, let's load up directory opus. Oh, it did. Oh, hang on, that opened. Maybe it's because it's opened. No, you see, no, it didn't open, did it? It didn't. It opened the screen and went like that, and then panicked and ran away. So it's dropped in. I've got that in a mode it can't handle. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the. This is meant to give you a feel for how it performs. So if you see I'm scrolling that around. Now again, obviously don't forget I am recording, but it should be. It's just in 30 frames a second, and this is pretty much how it runs. So if I go into screen mode, just to show you the mode we're in at the moment. So I'm in 1280 by 720, 16-bit mode. I'm pretty sure we do a quick test. I think we can do 24-bit. Yep, 24-bit's fine. Okay. Can we do 32-bit? Yep, looks like we can do 32-bit. The one I tend to do is leave it in 16-bit because it's a lot. It is quicker. Okay, it runs quicker. On the UnAmiga, I tend to keep it in 256 color mode. The highest color mode it can go in is 15-bit color. Can't at the moment go any higher than that. But that's 32,000 colors, and it looks amazing. But it's a little bit slower. So I tend to run that in 15-bit color. But you can see this all works, and it also has got now. Ignore some of the other modes because a lot of these won't work. And I'm not even going to bother. Well, I'm not even going to bother trying on here. What's the screen refresh? It's 50. So yeah, I'm not even going to bother to show you that. These don't really work. So the ones you want to go by, which do work, is the 1024s, okay, and the 1280 by 720. But to be fair, that you've got a 4:3 aspect ratio on the 1024, and the 1280 gives you a widescreen one, and that's more than good enough. Anyone, I think the work they've done with this RTG mode is absolutely fantastic. And if I load up, for example, let's go find. Let me go and find a program. Now, the one thing where you will notice the speed. Now you notice everything opens up really nice and quick. Yeah. Right, this is really, really lovely. This. Now, this is where you notice it. So I'm going to open up. I think is that PNG. Let's see how long it takes to open this up. Okay. That's not too bad. I've got a feeling that's a PNG. No, I don't know. It probably is a JPEG. Okay, so it takes a while to look because there's no FPU on this as well. But it's working and it works really nice. You just have to wait a little bit longer for it. But as far as an Amiga build, I mean, it's actually really nice. It's been done so well. We're hoping we can get AmiKit on here at some point. But I've got a really nice one that's a lot lighter than this. And if you go for we'll be giving you a cost option upgrade for OS 3.1.4. But yeah, that's But as far as running Amiga applications, I mean, this thing just runs beautifully. Let me just load up something like. Again, I can't put it in Amiga modes because they're just not going to display. But that's not the machine. That's, as I said, that's actually my capture card. It just it can't do it. I don't know. The software is just not really very clever. As soon as it goes out of its happy frequency, it kind of gets the Right, I don't know what this is. This may. Now you know what? Let's not load that. See, I don't know. I'm kind of nervous of opening up something that's going to take a week. Now this is JPEG. So this is now where you'll notice the difference. If you get yourself a Vampire, it's really fast, right? Especially with JPEG, they've got a data type that uses the AMMX functionality built into the Vampire code. That is impressive, and this stuff's like blindingly fast. But if you were thinking, I want to paint programs and that kind of thing in the Amiga with FPGA, you really want to be thinking about the Vampire. But the point about this is, it's not just about the Amiga with this one, it's about an awful lot more. And who knows, maybe one day there'll be an FPU for it. I don't know. I mean, it's a lovely thought, but who knows. But even then, it still won't be as fast as a Vampire, but it would be quicker than this. But there you go, so it's loaded. And let me see if I think, no, actually, I think that is full size already. Yeah, it's full size already. But you basically got this really nice, yeah. I mean, it's a nice RTG system. You see, you just flick backwards. And see, it doesn't like that one because that's actually on an Amiga screen mode, and it's the frequency's kind of freaked out the capture card. But yeah, so do that. So if you're in RTG modes, that's I know a lot of these are not. Yeah, let's load this up. And we'll open this up. Let's find. I always do a text. Oh, here we go. So you can see, you know, it actually, I think it runs nicely. You can't expect it to run at vampire speed. It just isn't a vampire. But to be honest, it does work great. The real key thing is these run at full speed. So if I could actually show you it. So what I want to show you now is, say you want to run something interesting now, you know, on the, actually I didn't show you on the cores, but I've actually got a Mac Plus core, which is like the original Mac. It's really funny to watch it. But if you want to run a Mac that's useful, we've got this one here. Now, for the MiSTix or the D10, the Mister, and the UnAmiga, I would recommend you keep well clear of 8.1 because it runs really slow. I run 7.5, and let me just make sure the display's set. Yep, that's been set. This, you know, it will run and it runs fine, but this is just quicker. And most of the software you want to run, which interestingly is behind my face, which it won't really help much. I can always kill me though, can't I? Oh, I'm just going to delete me from display. Hang on. There you go. That's me out of the way. So if I open up these two. I can put me back up. Right. So you can see there's loads of stuff in here. I mean it's, you know, it's a Mac. Okay. Simple text. And of course, you know, control panels, monitors. I mean it's a Mac. You know, I like the teddies. My little boy likes the teddies. But in here I've got something that I will run. Oh, where is it? I always forget what it's called. It's a Prince of Persia. There you go. Now mine is a quite high resolution. There we go. Now of course it's just been emulated within the Amiga because they both got the same CPU. But because it's RTG, it's, you know, and it will run as quick, if not quicker. Retro RMC Neil, he kind of showed that. Here we go. The Amiga is actually slightly faster because I think it's more efficient than the Mac. Here we go. So, there we go. So, you know, it works. Crunch. Right, but I'm sure you know how Mac works. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to quit that. And then again, we can just flip over to the Amiga. Okay, so we can go over to the Amiga and back. It's just another screen, which is quite nice. How much memory are we using? Hardly even noticed it. Because with this it comes with like 350 megabytes of RAM, something stupid like that, because the Mister has got a ton of memory on the card itself. Now this is nothing to do with the faster. They have an SD RAM card. The Amiga uses the SD RAM for 2 meg chip RAM. Apparently that's all it uses it for. So you don't need 128. So if you're literally just thinking of the Amiga for it, as it's going to come with 32 meg, is no biggie, and most cores do not need more than 32 meg. It's only the Neo Geo. If you're going to run Neo Geo, you need to go up to well, you might as well go to 128. Mucking about, and we will do an upgrade. Yeah, it's just for Amiga users, 32 is like it's all you need. I mean, if it could be 2, would be happy. It's a shame you actually need it, to be fair. But having said that, there's an awful lot of cores that actually don't need any memory, the extra memory. It's just they do it for a certain reason. They need SD RAM. Because remember, this is simulating chips. Okay. Right, so let's close this down. Let's close it down properly. Shut down. There we go. Let's run one more program, I think, just to show. Again, it's a shame I can't show you the. Maybe on another demo I'll sort out the running Amiga's. A native. I have this on all the cores though. To be fair, you try because obviously what it does is it spits them out in the frequency that it's displayed at, and the Amiga displays 15 kilohertz small, and so of course it's not going to capture that. Well, my capture card is not going to capture that. Let's see what we got. 2D. How about P-Paint? Mike's bit of software. He won't mind me showing this because it's on the pack. So audio cannot be activated. Well, whatever. Let's load an image in here. Proceed. What have we got in here? We got any? That's a good question actually. Where would? Oh, let's go into here. My files. My images. Let's load up a Jim Sash. There we go. Let's read this one in. Let's not stretch it. Just load this one in so we can see this. There you go. It's one of the old, and of course we can turn that off and that off. And of course if you wanted to save this, what you can do, what I like doing is, the way I create my backdrops is I actually use this, and so now I've got that's the size of the screen, and then you just save it. So we can have a look at that. And what I was doing was I was getting loading another picture. If I go up to here and load a brush, go back. This is how I did my backdrop picture for anyone who wants to know. It's not for most Amiga people know how to do this. Jim Sash. Let's get the motherboard. Where's the motherboard? Amiga motherboard. Now this will come in, it looks weird. So if we go up to the menu, brush, color, remap. There we go. And then I just shove it up here. And I'm doing this so you can get a feel for how fast it actually moves the stuff around. So you can see it's not super fast, but it does the job and it works. And it's because don't forget I've got this in a quite high resolution mode, so it's moving quite a bit of data. But it's cool. Anyway, I think that's enough for now. Okay, so yes, RTG works great. Look, what can I say? If you want to run a Amiga, the demos, they will work perfectly. Trust me. I mean, I've showed some filmed ones or elsewhere. It's just a capture card can't capture them, unfortunately. So that's just one of those things. But yeah, works great. RTG is amazing. Don't forget, RTG is also available on the UnAmiga. Slightly lower color depths, only 15-bit color maximum, but the same resolutions. So they're both pretty damn good, to be honest. Anyway, that's it. Okay, so I suppose this is the kind of extreme end of building a case inside the Checkmate 1500 Mini. What we have here is a Mini ITX motherboard. It has a Ryzen 3400G. It also has water cooling, so it's important to understand that this case was not designed with putting in a discrete GPU in it. If you don't know what that means, probably not a question to worry about. It's not designed for that. That's what the Plus case was made for, because it was bigger and could take a discrete GPU. This is designed for Mini ITX systems only. So you'll notice in here I've got a water-cooled unit, but I've got it on a Ryzen 3400G, which is probably one of the better of the all-in-one chips. The Ryzen chip says this one's got 4 cores, 8 threads. It's also got an I think it's an 8-core, 12-core Radeon processor on there. You can get specs, just look up 3400G. But it gives damn good for 1080p, mid-range 1080p gaming. It's brilliant. I'm not a massive gamer, but I mean, it would play the AAA games at 1080p at say low to medium settings. A lot cheaper than have a GPU, but also you know, it's in a really small, compact little case. This has got a 350. In fact, actually, I had this running from a 250-watt power supply, which we'll probably supply it with. I know people go, well, that's not enough. But this is only a 65-watt TDP part. And so there isn't much else that needs to run on this. I think 250-watt will be just fine. You'll notice, so it's got a water cooled pump here. I'm using the deep cool one here. All this lights up. It's all very much RGB, which is obviously not turned on at the moment because of the way I've got it sitting upright. We still have access to the PCIe connector on this side, and so you can then put in a half height card. In this, I've got in the a PCIe recording unit, so it can record HDMI, VGA. Excuse me, just adjust my feet. VGA and composite, etc. It's actually a really good little card, so I've got to test that. But you can see, so it's got M.2 on this motherboard. I'm using not an overly expensive card, but an average card, and it's a pretty damn good, pretty good choice. And you notice on the drive tray, you notice I've got the drive tray mounted the other side. Normally the drive tray would be this side, but because of the water cooling unit, it won't fit there. So obviously it's important to understand. Now, one thing we are doing, because to make life a little bit easier, I'm going to make this a little bit deeper, about 30mm to an inch to 30mm. It's just going to give a little bit more room. We're fine here, but in this setup it works out fine. I just want to give a little bit more space so that we can mount things on here. So one of the things we're thinking of mounting, the reasons for doing this, I'll give an example, is to be able to fit something like this, which I have in quite a lot of my cases. A couple of USB 3s and some SD card readers. There's different types of those, but we need the extra space to put a mount frame to allow it to hold that in place. But the drive tray going over here as well. We've got the if you want to put an SD card on there, but you've got an M.2 slot, so you don't really need it. But apart from that, it's a PC. You know, it can emulate the Amiga. Obviously, you can run AmiKit on it. With Amiga Forever, and you'll get a fantastic experience. I still prefer the Pi 4. I don't know why, but I've noticed this is only probably 2 or 3 times. It's not much. It is faster. It's faster than the Pi, obviously, but I actually quite like the Pi. But if you do want to build a PC, I think this makes a really nice little media system. And you know, if it's got that Amiga style, the Amiga 3000 style, in a black case, you can put it in a white case if you want. But it's there as an option. So as I said, we're gonna. You may be able to see the 3 fans here. If I turn it on its side, you should be able to see on the back now. Let's make sure it's in line. Yeah, should be able to see on the back. We've got all the connectors. So there's your output plate. You can see here's the connector for the PCIe card and your power supply. Underneath here is still got the access panel. Haven't decided quite what to do with it yet. I have an idea of potentially maybe fitting one of these underneath here. I don't know yet, but we're still giving that, because again, until the Kickstarter is a success, you know, we don't want to invest any more money into this. But if it is, then we'll look into the best thing we can do with that. Apart from that, you may notice I've got these feet underneath. These are really cheap rubbish ones. I've got some really nice ones coming, which are in fact on the white one, nice bronze metal ones instead of these cheap old rubbish ones. I got them as an experiment and decided to dump them. But as you can see, what it does by having the feet underneath, I'm not sure if you can see that, but it gives it about 20mm gap underneath, and that will allow the fan to blow the air out, so that you can suck in the cold air from the front and blow that out from the base. And also in the back here, hopefully you can see, we've got 3 50mm fans as well at the back. Preferably try and get the silent type. No fan silent, but you know, try and get something that's a little bit more quiet. But yeah, I think it's quite a nice looking system. If you want to build a PC and emulate the Amiga, or just build a PC and make it look like an Amiga, I mean, that's up to you. But hopefully people will like this, and thanks so much. Bye.